So I shaved off half an eyebrow this week. We're going to be very British and ignore it for the rest of the video. Welcome back to the Mr. Baker's Cakes kitchen and week 4 of my Bakealong with the Great British Bake Off. This week it was Dairy Week and we're making Maids of Honour tarts. Let's get to the video. Yeah, I don't really know what Dairy Week's all about either, to be honest, but it's Dairy Week. So the bakers were creating bakes using different kinds of dairy. The signature was a dairy cake, and if you're anything like me, you're probably thinking, but all cakes are dairy. Specifically, the dairy cakes in the signature challenge had to include some kind of cultured dairy, whether that was buttermilk or some form of yogurt. In the technical, as you already heard, they were making Maids of Honour tarts, which apparently were King Henry VIII's absolute favourite, while the showstopper was traditional milk-based Indian sweets called mishti. As always, I'm going to be attempting the technical challenge, so today we will be making, or trying to make, 12 Maids of Honour tarts, which involves a rough puff pastry filled with lemon curd and a curd cheese filling. Yeah. So we're going to start by making the curd cheese, then it will be pastry, then it will be lemon curd, then I'll probably have some form of breakdown as I usually do, and then hopefully we'll get these assembled within this week's time limit of 2 hours. So we'll start by setting the timer. And let's get baking. So we're starting with the curd cheese, and to do that, apparently I need to put 900 millilitres of full fat milk into a saucepan. Didn't spill any, win. And then to that I need to add in 1 teaspoon of fine salt. I'm just using table salt, seems pretty fine to me. And then that needs to go on the hob over a kind of a low to medium heat to be brought to a light boil. So as always, I'm going to go over there and do that, and then when I come back, we'll see what happens. Now, I'm pretty confident today's recipe is going to be all about multitasking because the curd cheese is going to have various stages to make it work. So obviously at the moment I've got it on the hob. Then when it comes off the hob, I've got to pour some vinegar in and leave it to kind of separate. Then I've got to sieve it. Then I've got to leave it to stand. So I can't just be doing that and then move on to worry about the pastry. So while it's on the hob, I'm going to start getting the stuff together to make the bases of the pastry. And then hopefully I can take it off the hob, then come back to the pastry. I imagine it's all going to go horribly wrong because I'm a man and multitasking isn't something we can do. But, you know, let's continue last week's resolve to be more positive and give this a go. And yeah, pastry. So in my bowl I have got 200 grams of plain flour, a pinch of salt, and I've just added in 35 grams of chilled unsalted butter. And what we're going to do is combine those together until they're resembling breadcrumbs, kind of like if you were making scones, I guess. Before I do that, I am, however, just going to stir the milk mixture. So that all seems fine. So hands in to my giant, beautiful old-fashioned Mason Cash bowl. Hashtag not sponsored, but if they would like to send me more stuff, I would be very grateful because I love it. No? Okay. So I'm just rubbing these together until we get something that resembles breadcrumbs. How are we all this week? What do we all think of this week's episode? Did the right person go home? According to my social media, no. It was a shame to see Phil go. He's very active in a lot of the baking and cake decorating groups that I'm in on both Facebook and Twitter. He seems a really nice chap, but it's never nice to see anyone go, really, is it? Do you know what? I knew Steph was going to have a good week this week, though. I don't know what it was. I put up a tweet before the episode started, or just as it was starting, and I just said I felt like Steph was going to have a really good week this week. It was going to be her time to shine. I feel like we hadn't really seen that much of her. And, you know, if she was going to go home fairly early on, you'd think they'd kind of use more of her in the earlier episodes. Otherwise, she'd just be like this random person that was there briefly and then disappeared. But lo and behold, she went on to do very well. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but we're kind of combined. We've got like breadcrumminess going on. So now we need to add some water. As always with baking, when you're adding liquids to dry ingredients, start slow. If you throw it all in, you could end up with too wet a mixture and you can't take the water back out again. If you put too little in and it's too dry, you can always add more. So there you go, that's this week's top tip. Now the recipe says to go in with 5 to 7 tablespoons of water, so I have got my tablespoon measure, and I'm going to start with 5 because I'm going to trust the recipe that 5 is not going to be too much. Now we've all been stung by bake-off recipes before, but it's not going to happen today. So, stirring the water in, and what should happen is it should combine together to create, oh whoops, I am making the tripod shake. Nobody's getting seasick. Yeah, it should come together to create a dough. We'll go for 1 more tablespoon. See how that does. Let's get some hands in there. Why are you so wobbly today? You're not normally this wobbly. My hands are a bit grubby at the moment, but I promise I will sort out the wobbly tripod. Okay, so that has had 6 tablespoons of water. I think I'm pretty happy with that. So we will stop there, go check the milk, and then sort out wobbly tripods. I think I've managed to sort out the kind of the wobbly tripod issue, but I'm not entirely convinced that we're very level anymore, but never mind. I've also taken the milk off the heat because I think we've reached a gentle boil, and so now I need to pour in 45 millilitres of white wine vinegar, and then I'm going to stir that through. That looks rank. Can you see that? So I now need to set that aside for 5 minutes, and then we're going to sieve it. Now, sievage. Pour the mixture into the prepared sieve and leave to drain into the bowl for at least 30 minutes until cool. To sieve it, we're using a damp muslin cloth. I have a muslin cloth, which I bought on Amazon, I believe. I can try and find a link and put it down below. I originally bought this to do the gâteau vert. I think it was last year on the Bakealong challenge, which was the one where you had to use spinach to colour your icing. We had a bit of a disaster with that one, but we won't talk about that. While I am playing with curd cheese, I'm just going to throw my pastry in the fridge. A, so it doesn't dry out, but also we need to keep it cool. And I have very, very hot hands. I'm going to chill this at every possible opportunity that I can. So, cling film, fridge, curd cheese. Okay, so it's definitely separated. Hopefully you can see that. So we've got lumps of curd cheese. So I'm going to pour this through the muslin into the sieve. I'm sure I've had similar results previously when I've tried to make cream-based pasta sauces. So, you know, hopefully that experience finally paid off. And I need to leave that to cool for about half an hour and get on with the pastry. Now to make the rough puff pastry, we are going to need some grated butter. So I have frozen this. I'm using some bog standard cheese grater. Again, it's all about working fast because we need things to stay cold. We don't want things to be melting. So what I'm going to do is grate this, throw it back in the freezer, roll out the pastry, get it back out the freezer, and that's how we will do it. I'm also trying not to grate my fingers because that's also happened before. I'm wearing gloves because obviously they're going to protect me from injury. Butter, grated. Let's put that in the freezer again. I'm trying to work really efficiently today because, in rather exciting news, I have a new niece who was born on Sunday, baby Ellie, and I'm going up to visit her tomorrow, so I need to get this video kind of shot, edited, and ready to upload first thing in the morning so that I can spend the day with family, which will be lovely. But it does mean that there's an extra pressure. It's a lot earlier in the day than I normally shoot my videos as well. But we can do this. It's going to be fine. So I'm using a non-stick board to roll out my pastry, but I'm going to flour it anyway. And I need to roll this out to make a rectangle. The recipe does give exact dimensions. In fact, let's check what those dimensions are. 30 centimetres by 12 centimetres. That's how we take measure. It's the bake-off, we measure. Good enough. And then we're going to do the first of our book turns with our frozen butter. So half of this goes on the bottom 2/3. Right, and then at this point, so it looks like that, we are going to put it back in the fridge for 20 minutes. I've got the pastry cooling in the fridge, I've got the curd cheese mix cooling on the side over in the kitchen there, and next up, while those are both cooling, I'm going to move on to the lemon curd. So to start with, I'm going to need the zest of an unwaxed lemon. I tend to buy these as fresh as I can, so if I'm baking with lemon zest, I'll go and buy the lemons on that day where possible. And you'll remember in a previous video I said how important it was to have more than one of every item if you're trying to bake along with a bake-off, because we're grating again. And luckily I do have 2 of these. Lemon is absolutely one of my favourite flavours in the whole world. I love baking with lemon.
A few moments later.
And then we're going to need the juice of that lemon as well. Now I've made lemon curd many times before, but we are following the bake-off recipe, which is slightly different to mine. So we're starting off with the zest of that lemon that we just grated. That goes in the bowl. That's going to go over a pan of simmering water until the butter is melted, and then we'll whisk in the beaten egg. 1 egg. I'm going over there now. We've been going for about 5 minutes and my arm is really aching already. Okay, so that has been whisked for 10 minutes and it said until it was thick like custard, which I think it is. We did have a hairy moment where the doorbell rang midway through my 10 minutes of whisking, but that was my suit for this year's Cake Masters Awards. Possibly, if I like it. So I feel like it's a valid trade-off if my lemon curd isn't quite perfect. I've worn the same suit to the Cake Masters Magazine Awards for the last, gosh, how many years now? 5 years? Those of you who have been watching my videos for, well, since January when I started will have noticed that I've a fair bit this year. It's the YouTube diet. Watch yourself on a video whilst editing for hours on end. It's all the incentive you need. So highly recommended, the YouTube diet. But yeah, so I thought I'd treat myself to something new, and it's a little bit different, but you'll have to wait and see because no spoilers. So I'm gonna sieve the lemon curd to remove the lemon zest because we want it nice and smooth. Other than the 10 minutes of whisking, making lemon curd is so easy, but it's one of those things that you think is gonna be really tough. Highly recommended if you've not done it before. And this recipe was super simple because you're only making a small batch. Lemon curd. It smells so good. Okay, so I'm gonna just pop that aside now to set, and the next job is to do our next set of 2 book turns on the rough puff pastry. Time check. We are just over an hour into the challenge. My pastry is cooling for another 20 minutes and then it'll be time to roll it out and book turn it one more time, ready to use. Thinking about it, so we are just over an hour into the challenge now. The pastry needs to have one more lot of book turn, book fold, whatever you want to call it, and one final chill before we can roll it out and use it. The lemon curd is done. The cheese curd mixture is done as far as I've made the curd cheese. I still need to turn that into a filling, but I will probably do that while I'm blind baking the pastry. So we have a bit of kind of downtime at the moment, which probably means I've gone wrong somewhere. But yeah, so just under an hour to go. I'm not sure if we're gonna do it, to be honest. That's another, let's say I can do the pastry again in a minute. That's still gonna be another 20 minutes before I can roll it out, get it in the oven, blind bake it. I don't think we're gonna do it. I think we might go over again this week, possibly by about 5-10 minutes. What I can do now is make the rose stencil. So that's what I'm gonna do next. That actually wasn't as painful as I thought it would be. Turns out it's really easy to cut grease-proof paper with a scalpel. So yay. I'll probably lose this now or spill something on it. So I'm gonna put it over here. You are my witnesses, so when I can't find it, it's there, okay? How are we doing for time? It must be time to do pastry again, surely. We're gonna do pastry again. So this is how I know I've gone wrong somewhere, because I shouldn't have this dead time now while I'm waiting for the pastry to do its final chill. Everything that I can do is done. We've literally got about 35-40 minutes left to go. Guess I'll have a bit of a tidy up and then we'll carry on.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Okay, so it is time to carry on, finally. Okay, heat the oven. Oh, I wanted to talk about this. On the recipe it says heat the oven to 250 degrees C or 230 degrees fan. That is way too hot to blind bake your pastry. You will cremate your pastry if you blind bake it at 230 degrees fan. We're not going to be doing that. I usually blind bake my pastry at about 180 degrees fan for 20 minutes. This wants you to do it at 230 for 20 minutes. So I'm gonna do it at 180 just because I always do, and I have no idea what they were thinking. Part of me really wants to do it just to show that it's wrong, but I'm not going to, because I have not gone to all this effort to cremate some pastry at the last hurdle. We are going to preheat the oven to 180 degrees fan, and then we are going to roll out the pastry to about 3 mil thick, and then use a 10 centimeter, that's not a 10 centimeter, and then use a 10 centimeter cutter to cut out 12 rounds of pastry. I wonder what size they were all using on the Bake Off, because they're all, if you've watched it, if you haven't watched it, just go and watch it now and then come back. They were all really small, if you remember. They were like tiny little tarts. That is a 10 centimeter cutter, and that is huge. It's like huge. I honestly don't know how they managed to end up with such tiny tarts unless they weren't told what size cutter to use. Maybe they were given 2 and they had to pick one, but 10 centimeter, because we're using muffin tins and they are deep. Let's roll. And then we need to blind bake these, as I said, in the preheated oven. And we're going to pop a little bit of greaseproof paper inside. Now the bakers in the tent were using lentils to fill their pastry cases, but I'm not going to buy lentils just for the sake of blind baking pastry, so I'm going to use my usual baking beads. I think these ones are no longer have a label on because I've had them for years, but they just allow you to kind of weight down the grease proof and stop the pastry rising too much so that you get a nice thin crust rather than allowing all those kind of laminated layers to at the bottom of the tin. Okay, so they now need to go into the oven, according to the recipe, for about 20 minutes. So the last stage of the make, before we kind of assemble it all together and finish them off, is the filling of the actual Maids of Honour tart. And to make that, we're going to need the curd cheese that we prepared earlier. So that has been sat draining for ages, actually, way longer than it was supposed to. We need to combine it now with the zest of 2 more lemons, 100 grams of caster sugar, a tiny bit of plain flour and 2 large eggs. I've got hiccups. How embarrassing. Okay, so the recipe said I should have about 200 grams of curd cheese and I have 194 grams, so pretty happy with that. And now I'm going to add in my 100 grams of caster sugar, 10 grams of plain flour. You'll notice that I didn't weigh it all out this week. 2 large eggs, and the zest of the 2 lemons.
A few moments later.
So it says to whisk this together until smooth, and I'll be honest, I'm not getting it very smooth. It's quite bitty. You can see the cheese. It's like little globby bits of cheese.
A few moments later.
I think I'm going to roll with that. It doesn't seem to be getting any better. Now we just wait for the blind bake to finish and then we can get some tarts filled. Time-wise, we're pretty much getting to a point where we're going to be out of time soon. I think we'll probably get the tarts baked, but there's no way we're going to have them cooled and finished before the time runs out. So I'm quite impressed actually that the bakers managed to get every stage of the bake done. Obviously we know that lots of the bakers didn't manage to have great success with their Maids of Honour, and there is a high possibility that I won't manage to have much success with mine. But I kind of feel like we need to give this recipe every chance it's got. Yeah. 8 minutes.
Eventually.
They're looking quite well risen. Let's see if we can get some of these out without spilling them everywhere. I think if Mary Berry was still on the Bake Off, she would describe my cases as informal. It was quite hot. The last job is, I believe, we put some lemon curd in the bottom, then we fill them up to the top with the curd cheese filling, and then we bake for 10 to 12 minutes at 160 degrees. So I'm going to turn the oven down, I'm going to transfer that liquid into a jug, get my lemon curd, and we will finish these off. So my lemon curd is nice and thick, and it tastes like lemon curd, so that's always a plus. I'm just going to put a dollop, which is the official baking term, in the bottom of each case. I'm going to try to spread it around a little so it's not just a blob. That noise means I forgot to turn the other camera on, so I won't have any footage of me actually spooning the lemon curd in, which is annoying. In fact, it's actually that the memory card is full on that one, so excellent. It doesn't help that I left it running during one of the 20-minute chills, so I have 20 minutes of footage that I don't need. And then what I'm going to do, I'm also going to... It's good for you, it's lemon, it's fruit. I'm going to pour my filling into a jug, and then I'm going to fill the tart cases up over at the oven so that I'm not kind of wobbling around with them and spilling it, because if you spill filling from a tart case it will just like cement itself into the tin and you will never get it out. You need to fill them up so they're full but not overflowing, so I'm going to go and do that, and then I'll do a sneaky little phone video or something so that you can see. Okay, so I have filled them up. There's one or two that are possibly a little bit overfilled, So I guess we will see what happens in the oven. They are now going in. And they need to bake for about 10 to 12 minutes until set. I have seen some people post kind of their results of their baking attempts of them online already. Twitter, again, the Gbbo Twitter Bakealong hashtag is where you need to head on Twitter to check out other bakers' attempts. But I have seen that there seems to be quite a lot of rising that happens. So if that is the case, then some of my really full ones could just go. But I guess we'll wait and see what happens. So set timer for 10 minutes.
Okay, your timer is set for 10 minutes.
We'll start with that and then we'll see how they are looking afterwards. I'm not going to be dusting on the Tudor Rose icing sugar until these have fully cooled. If you put it onto something hot and moist, all that will happen is it will just kind of dissolve in. So for it to sit on top and kind of stay there, they need to be fully dry, which means they need to have fully cooled down as well. So when we wrap up the video, I won't have done the icing sugar roses on the top, but what I will do is in the edit, pop in a photograph of the kind of the finished thing, including the icing sugar, so that you can see how the stencil came out. Looking at them and looking at my stencil, it's too big. I don't mind that, it will be fine. But yeah, so I will check back in with you guys in about 10 minutes when they've come out of the oven and we'll see how we got on. Okay, so I checked them and they were, I'd say pretty much there. It said till they're set and I touched it and it felt set, although I have nothing to compare it to. But I thought I'd just play the odds and whack it on for an extra minute just to be on the safe side. So any second now, they will be coming out. So that is, well, you can't see what they look like because that camera's full. Let's get some phone footage. And you can see the carnage of my work area. There you go. That's what you normally don't get to see. But anyway, this is what they look like. There's very little in the way of colour, but these kind of darker bits is where I like to spilt the mixture as I was pouring it in. Now, you could argue, of course, that if I'd put them to blind bake at a higher temperature, there would be a darker colour on them. I feel like the colour on the pastry is actually okay. Now, the final thing is going to be to somehow get these out and put them onto a cooling rack to cool. So there's one. That was an easy one though, because it kind of sticks up from the surface. The pastry is definitely cooked. Ow, ow, ow. But there you go, there's definitely no soggy bottom. Now follows however many minutes of footage of me burning myself on just out of the oven. Maids of Honour tarts, as eaten by Henry VIII. Wow, no, yeah, there you go, look at that for a colour. Gorgeous.
A few moments later.
Okay, they're out. Woo! I tell you what, if you're really good, we'll jump ahead in the edit and you can see what they look like completely finished. We'll do some sort of like video trickery where I do like this. Okay, so in the end we did end up running over on time, and as you know, I hadn't dusted them with the icing sugar at the point that I kind of wrapped up the challenge. So technically you could say that this was a fail. However, I think we can all safely say that they came out better than the bakers in the tents. They do look fairly rustic, but I guess it is a Tudor recipe, so you wouldn't expect them to look like pristinely perfect. And obviously I haven't at this point tasted one, so I can't tell you what they taste like. They smell okay. The pastry feels nice and crisp, and there was definitely some flakiness happening when I was picking them out. You can definitely see lamination going on as well. So all in all, I think they came out pretty good. Definitely not going to be ashamed to post them online. In fact, what we can do is compare to the rest of the picture at the top of the recipes. Can you see that? Ish. So again, they are quite rusticy. They've got that kind of informity, is that a word? Informal pastry going on. Yeah, pretty good. So we are 4 weeks down, 5 I think to go. Next week is 1920s week, apparently, which is a thing. And based on the preview that we saw, I think we are going to be making, oh, I have no idea how to pronounce this. Beignets? Beignets, that sounds like a thing I've heard of. So they are a deep fried choux pastry kind of puff. But anyway, that's next week's video. If you enjoyed today's video, please do make sure you give me a thumbs up down below on, I always get this wrong, that side. And if you would like to see more videos like this one, you can click the subscribe button, which is on that side. If you've already subscribed to Mr. Baker's Cakes here on YouTube, there is also the bell icon. If you click that, that will make sure you get a notification of every time I upload a new video. I do hope you are enjoying this experience of baking along with a Great British Bake Off with me, and I do hope that I'm helping to unpick some of the more baking focused elements of the challenge rather than just the drama of doing it against the clock. So if you have stumbled your way here because of being a fan of the Great British Bake Off, then again do hit that subscribe button and stick around and become a cake chum. On that note, if you would like to get your hands on some of my Mr. Baker's Cakes merch, which has been seen in a few videos over the last few weeks, you can head to the link down there and you can check out the launch collection of t-shirts. There are more to come, so do keep an eye on the website as well. Thank you so much once again for watching, guys, and I will see you next week for 1920s week. Take care.